We continue now at the top of Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph in Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf 57a. The Gemara here continues that the wife of Rav Avia irches ksubasa, she lost her ksuba. And so the Gemara says, Asu l'kami de Rav Yosef, they came before Rav Yosef, Amar lahu, he said to them, Hachi Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, this is what Rav Yehuda says, that Shmuel says, Zu divrei Rabbi Meir, this is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Aval Chachamim Amar, but the Chachamim say, Mesha Adam Misishto, Shtayim V'shalo Shanim Below Ksuba. A person is allowed to be with his wife 2 or 3 years, even without a ksuba. Rashi over here says, Zu divrei Rabbi Meir de Amar La'el. Rabbi Meir said earlier, Kol apoches levesula mimasayim va'afilu b'tana va'tanai batel karila be'ilas nos mishum delo samcha daita. Let's say you have a situation, according to Rabbi Meir, where you do less than the standard amount in the ksuba. So even though that tanai that you made is batel, and really it's the full amount, but since she doesn't have a smichas hadas, she's not relying on the fact she doesn't think she'll really get the full amount. So therefore it's considered a be'ilas nos. The same would be true. Let's say you have a woman who loses shtar ksubasa, her ksuba, he wouldn't be allowed to be with her. Again, even though she's not going to lose out because there's a condition of bezin that she's going to be allowed to collect, but still she doesn't rely on it because she doesn't actually have the document. Because she's going to say it herself, when I claim the money, he'll say it's already paid. Therefore, the Rabbi Meir says it's considered a be'ilas nos. But the Chachamim say the leslan lemechash mishum mesmach daita detavi be'ilas nos. According to the Chachamim, there's no concern that the fact that she doesn't really rely on it or she's not sure of it, that is not enough to render it a be'ilas nos, according to the Chachamim. And so the Gemara continues, Amar le Abaye, so Abaye said back to Rav Yosef, V'yomer Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel, but didn't Rav Nachman say that Shmuel said, Halacha Rabbi Meir b'gzeirosov, that the halacha is like Rabbi Meir when he makes a gezeira. So why are we saying that the halacha is like the Chachamim, we should follow Rabbi Meir, and this should be a problem? Rashi over here says, b'gzeirosov, b'dover shu machmer al dvar Torah b'isser v'heter. Anytime he's machmer on something, on a doraisa level, and it's an issue of isser v'heter, al yedei gzeiras divreim, he makes a gezeira midrabanan, the halacha is like Rabbi Meir, and therefore again we should be strict in this case. And so the Gemara says, Yachi, if so, zil ksovla. So Rav Yosef said, if so, then you have to write her another ksuba. Rashi over here says, Yachi zil ksovla ksuba achrisi. He has to write her another ksuba, and that way they can be together. And the Gemara continues, Ki Yasser Rav Dimi Amar Rav Shimon ben Pazi Amar Rav Yoshua ben Levi Mishum Bar Kapora. When Rav Dimi came, he said that Rav Shimon ben Pazi said that Rav Yoshua ben Levi said in the name of Bar Kapora. Machlokes betchila, the machlokes between Rav Yehuda and Rav Yossi, we'll see Rashi in a moment, is at the beginning of the marriage. Aval besof, but if it's at the end, l'divrei hakol eina mocheles. Everybody agrees she cannot forgive the amount of the ksuba; it has to be paid in the full amount. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan says, Bein bazu, vein bazu, whether in the beginning, whether in the end, machlokes, it is still going to be machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. Rashi over here says, machlokes to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. There was machlokes earlier between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. The Yomer Rabbi Yehuda al pel lav tenohu, because Rabbi Yehuda said that let's say she verbally says she already received part of the ksuba, that's not considered a good condition at all. She's still entitled to the entire ksuba. Rabbi Yossi savar tenah kayim, but Rabbi Yossi says no, her condition is good, even if she says verbally that she accepted part of it, so then the ksuba we will deduct from the ksuba. Betchila, mefarish lekaman tchila asmai, Rashi says we're going to explain what does it mean in the beginning and at the end. And Rashi continues that Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said, Divrei hakol eina mocheles, that at the end everybody agrees she can't be mochel verbally. Shekvar zochsa, at that point she's already been zocha. V'amiras alav klum, and verbally saying she received it is not going to do anything. Elim kain kosva shover eskabalti, unless she actually writes out a receipt, an actual document that says she received part of the ksuba. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yavo says, L'didi meforshali mine de Rabbi Yochanan. To me it was explained from Rabbi Yochanan as follows, Di'anov Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi lo palgin hadadi, that I, meaning Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, we don't actually argue on each other, we're actually agreeing. What does it mean? Because my betchila to come Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, because when Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi talked about the tchila, what does that really mean? It means tchilas chuppah, it means at the beginning of the chuppah, at the beginning of the wedding. Umay and what does it mean when he says at the end? Again, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said at the end everybody agrees she cannot verbally forgive the ksuba. That refers to sof bia, that refers to the end of the actual act of relations, the very end when everything is over. And when I said that there's still a machlokas even basof, vein bazu machlokas, that whether at the beginning or at the end there's still a machlokas and it's possible she can verbally forgive the ksuba. So I wasn't talking about the end of bia, rather I meant tchilas chuppah, I meant the beginning is the beginning of the chuppah, v'sov chuppah, and then I also meant the end of of chuppah, not the end of bia, the tchilas bia. The end of the chuppah is the beginning. That's the time when they're actually going to begin to have the bia. As Rashi over here says, tchilas chuppah umay sof bia. Again, according to Rabbi Yochanan, what does it mean tchila v'sof? So tchila v'sof means, rather, according to Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, what does it mean tchila v'sof? It means the beginning of the chuppah and the end of the bia. V'hachi kamar, and here's what Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi meant. Mitchilas chuppah v'yad sof chuppah, from the beginning of the chuppah until the end of the chuppah. Pligi bar Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbi Yossi. There's a machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, whether she can verbally say that she already got part of the ksuba. Aval mishabala, but once already they had relations, Moed Rabbi Yossi, Dein b'dvar of klum, then already Rabbi Yossi admits that she can't really say anything, it's nothing to forgive part of the ksuba if she's just doing it verbally. V'chiyaminu ano bein bazu machlokas, and I, Rabbi Yochanan, when I said it's a machlokas at the beginning and the end, lava sof to Rabbi Yoshua, I mean, I wasn't talking about the sof of Rabbi Yoshua, ela sof chuppah, I just meant at the end of the chuppah, even there is still a machlokas, the kodem bia, that takes place before the bia, but again, everybody agrees at the end, after the bia, she cannot just simply say that she received part of the ksuba. And the Gemara continues, Ki asa Ravin Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Mishum bar Kapara. When Ravin came, he said that Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi said, that Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said in the name of bar Kapara, Machlokas levasof, that actually the machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi is specifically at the end. Aval b'tchila divrei hakol mochelas, but in the beginning everybody agrees. She can verbally say she got part of the ksuba, and she can forgive the ksuba. For Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan says, no, bein bazu machlokas, whether we're talking about the end, whether we're talking about the beginning, there is a machlokas. And the Gemara on this version says, Amar Rabbi Avo says, L'didi mefarshali mine de Rabbi Yochanan, to me it was explained from Rabbi Yochanan as follows, Di'anav Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, lo palgina nahadadi, that I and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, again, we don't actually disagree. Mai levasof, di Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, what does it mean when Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says levasof? Meaning to say in this version, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says there's a machlokas basof, that means to say sof chuppah, that's the end of the chuppah. Umay techila, and what does it mean the beginning? Techilas chuppah, it means the beginning of the chuppah. When I said bein bazu machlokas, when I Rabbi Yochanan said the machlokas is both betchila and basof, tchilas bia v'sof bia, I was referring to the beginning of the bia and the end of the bia. I meant to say that at that stage there's a machlokas. So again, according to this version, when you're talking about the chuppah, whether it be the tchilas chuppah or the sof chuppah, so in that situation there certainly is not a machlokas. In that situation, everybody agrees she can be mochel. And when you're talking about the sof, meaning over here, when you're talking about the tchilas bia and sof bia, at that stage, that's where everybody agrees there was a machlokas. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Papa says, he loved the Amar Rabbi Avo, if not for the fact that Rabbi Avo said, L'didi meforshali mine de Rabbi Yochanan, that it was explained to me from Rabbi Yochanan, De'anav Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi lo palgina nahadadi, that I and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi aren't actually arguing. If not that it was told that that was the case, that they're not actually arguing, I would have thought as follows, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi pligi, that actually no, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, they are actually arguing, and Rav Dimi v'Ravin lo pligi, and I would have thought that it's actually Rav Dimi and Ravin, again, they had different versions of what they heard. They're the ones that are not actually arguing. My sof to come a Ravin, because what we could say is as follows. When Ravin used the term sof, he meant to say sof chuppah, the end of the chuppah, the end of being under the wedding canopy. Umay techila to come a Rav Dimi, and what was the word techila? What did techila mean when Rav Dimi said techila? That meant techilas bia, that meant at the beginning of the bia. And therefore the use of terms of Ravin and Rav Dimi were actually different, and they're the ones that are not actually arguing. And the Gemara continues, Maika Mashmalon. So what is Rav Papa teaching us when Rav Papa says that he would have logically thought it makes more sense to say that Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi are arguing rather than saying Rav Dimi and Ravin are arguing? HaKamash Malon, what Rav Papa is teaching us is as follows, Depligi Trei Amoroi at Taima de Nafshayu, that it's more logical to say that two Amoraim are actually arguing based on their own reasonings. It would have been more logical in Rav Papa's mind, had he not heard otherwise, to say that Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi were simply having a logical dispute. It's not as logical offhand to say that two Amoraim are arguing in terms of what another Amora said. Meaning to say that at first glance it would not have been as logical to Rav Papa to say that Rav Dimi and Ravin were arguing in terms of what they heard from Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. And Rashi over here explains, Rav Papa says, he laved Amar, if not that I heard otherwise, so Anolo havanichali lefrushim el sayo hachi, I wouldn't have explained the machlokas in this manner. The Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua lo liflagu, to say that Rabbi Yochanan Yochanan and Rabbi Yehoshua, they're not arguing. Rav Dimi v'Ravin niflagu b'Rav Yehoshua, and it's Rav Dimi and Ravin, they're arguing in terms of what they heard from Rabbi Yehoshua. Elahachi havamina, but I would have thought as follows: Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi pligi. Actually, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, they really do argue. Diahu sof dekam Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi divrei hakol eina mochelas, because when Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says that by the case of sof, so he says everybody agrees that she can't be mochel. Also, Rabbi Yochanan l'meimer, Rabbi Yochanan is saying no. On that very case, af bazu machlokas. Even in that situation of sof, there's a machlokas between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. The Rav Dimi v'Ravin lo pligi with Rabbi Yehoshua, because Rav Dimi and Ravin, they're not arguing in terms of what Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said. No, they're agreeing in terms of what Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said, and it's actually that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi and Rabbi Yochanan actually are arguing. Here's how I would have explained it. Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yehoshua, according to Rav Dimi, who says in the name of Rabbi Yehoshua as follows: Machlokas b'tchilas bia. When he says there's a machlokas at the beginning, it means to say there's a machlokas at the tchilas bia, at the beginning of the bia. The sof chuppah, which is the sof chuppah. Aval b'sof bia divrei hakol eina mochelas. But if it's the end of the bia, if you're talking about b'sof bia, so everybody agrees she can't be mochel. Rabbi Yochanan Palagola, and Rabbi Yochanan would actually argue on Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. Diafilu b'sof bia nami pligi, that there's even a machlokas by sof bia. Even by sof bia, it's possible that she can be mochel. V'chiyasa Ravin Amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. And then when Ravin came and he quoted from Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, he said machlokas b'sof chuppah. When he said there's a machlokas b'sof, he meant to say that the quote from Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi was machlokas b'sof chuppah. V'hi tchilas bia, and sof chuppah is the same as tchilas bia. So in other words, the first statement was calling it tchila because it referred to tchilas bia. The second statement was calling it sof because it meant sof chuppah, which is the same as tchilas bia. The Kamar Nami Rav Dimi, Ravin is actually saying the same thing as Rav Dimi. Aval b'tchilas chuppah, but when it comes to tchilas chuppah, divrei hakol mochelas, everybody agrees she could be mochel. But Rashi continues, Aval Hashta, but now the Parish Rabbi Avo Rav Dimi, that Rabbi Avo has explained according to Rav Dimi, the Bein Rabbi Yochanan and Bein Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, that according to both Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, they both agree that according to both of them, Pligi Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda betchilas chuppah v'sof chuppah, that Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda are actually arguing both betchilas chuppah and besof chuppah. So according to that, Al Karchach, according to that, for sure, Pliga de Ravin, for sure, Rav Dimi is arguing on Ravin. Pliga de Ravin ad Rav Dimi, Ravin is arguing on Rav Dimi. Amar Ravin, because what Ravin said was betchilas chuppah divrei hakol mochelas, that betchilas chuppah it's not a machlokas, but everybody agrees she can be mochel. And Rashi continues, so my kamashmalan bahad Amar. What is Rav Papa teaching us over here? That Rav Papa says he loved to come Rabbi Avo, that if not for the fact that Rabbi Avo reported that Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi are not arguing, etc. Ha'amar Rabbi Avo already said that. V'yu lo boy leflugi aleh. Rav Papa's not trying to argue on Rabbi Avo. Well, l'may hilchas hashmin. And so what's Rav Papa teaching us when he says that had I not heard this, I would have said otherwise? D'lo Amar Rabbi Avo have a nicha leila diday, that it would have been better to Rav Papa to explain lefrushe binyan acher, to explain in another way. And to that, the Gemara explained, here's what Rav Papa was saying. HaKamash Malani was teaching us as follows. If you have a situation where Amoraim are arguing with each other, everyone's giving his own opinion based on logic. And then you have another machlokas Amoraim, they seem to be arguing in terms of what somebody said. And let's say you have a possibility, you can explain, you have two possibilities. You could on the one hand say that really the Amoraim are arguing in terms of logic. Kagon Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yehoshua, meaning Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yehoshua are actually arguing. And you could have that option and say the other two Amoraim are actually reporting the same thing in the name of that particular Amora. But rather those two are saying the same thing in different versions. But then you have another option to say, you can say that two Amoraim are arguing in terms of what one Amora said. Rav Dimi v'Ravin, like you're saying Rav Dimi and Ravin are arguing in terms of what Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said. And then in this version or in this option, you can say the original two Amoraim, they're agreeing actually. So Shavkina Hilishna the Miflagi we would rather not say that two Amoraim are arguing in terms of what someone said. We'd prefer to say that the other two Amoraim are the ones arguing. They're arguing in terms of Svara. Why is that the case? Because if two people are arguing in terms of what one said, one says this is what so-and-so said, the other one says that's what so-and-so said, there you know one of them is saying a lie. if you have, let's say, two Amoraim arguing in terms of logic, ein kan sheker, nobody's lying. Kol chad v'chad svar didei kamar. Everyone's just saying their own logic. Mar you have time le'atero, mar you have time le'isura. One saying a reason for heter, one saying a reason for iser. Mar medami milsa le'milsa hachi, mar medami le'binyana acharina. One is comparing things in this way, one in the other way. V'ikol le'meimar elu v'elu divrei lekim chayim hem. You could say divrei lekim chayim. They're all both true, just different logics. Zimnin d'shayach high time of zimnin d'shayach high time. Sometimes this reason makes more sense. Sometimes that reason makes more sense. Because a reason can change if there's just a little change in circumstance. So again, the point of Rav Papa was, had he not heard otherwise, he would rather say that there was a machlokas in substance between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi in terms of svara, than to say there's a machlokas between Rav Dimi and Ravin in terms of what they heard from another Amora. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Nosnin levesula shnei masar chodesh. We give a besula 12 months, mishatava habal, from the time of the Erisin, from the time that the Baal approached her to be married. Lafarnis atzatz, when we give her 12 months to prepare herself for the wedding. Uchashem shenosnin leisha kach, just like we give the woman 12 months to prepare for the nisuin. Nosnin leish lafarnis atzatz, we also give the man those 12 months in order for him to prepare himself. Uli almana shloshim yom, and the Mishnah continues, when it comes to marrying a widow, so she gets 30 days to prepare for the wedding. And the Mishnah continues, Higi azman velo nisu. Let's say the 12 months came, the 12 months are up, and they didn't get married, and that was the husband's fault. So ochlos mishalov ochlos betruma. So then already she's allowed to eat from the husband's property, and she's allowed to even eat from his truma. Let's say he's a kohen. Rabbi Tarfon says, no sin lo hakol truma. You always give her fully. He can give her all truma. He doesn't have to give her chulin. Let's say she's in a state of tumma where she would have to sell the truma. She can't eat the truma. Even in that situation, according to Rabbi Tarfon, he can give her truma and she'll sell the truma. Rabbi Akiva says, no, mechza chulin u mechza truma. He should give her half chulin and half truma. In times when she can eat truma, he can give her truma, but at times when she can't eat truma, he should give her chulin. Hayavam eino machil b'truma. The Mishnah continues that the yavam, let's say you have a situation of yibum, so in that case, let's say she's waiting to marry the yavam, she's not allowed to have truma in that situation. Let's say it was 6 months in front of the husband while the husband was alive, then he died, and then she's waiting 6 months for the yavam. Or even if she did all of the 12 months except for 1 day, she did b'fnei hayavam, just 1 day in front of the yavam. Or let's say she did all of the 12 months in front of the yavam, except there was 1 day that she did the waiting while the husband was alive. In all of those situations, she does not eat truma. And the Mishnah continues, Zu Mishnah Rishona. This was the original version, the original teaching. However, Bezdin Shalacharei and Amru, the later Bezdin, they said different. They said as follows, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Zayin Amud Beis.